Ah, you're the first person I've ever told that to. So, sorry, Dad, it was me. So Dad loved cars. He built his own hot rods. He grew up in Brooklyn, New York. He's still doing great. He lives in Dunwoody, Georgia now. And he grew up with his three brothers in Brooklyn, in a post-depression family where they saved everything. That's kind of instilled on me as well. I mean, I save every part off my Ferrari and every part off my Mercedes and everything. So Dad had, little hot rods, and he would, cut the mufflers off his old 51 Mercury, and, he had a real lead sled when he was a kid. And then he, in 1963, went to Italy for the army and spent many, many years there, and ended up getting into cars and finding out about Ferraris and Alfa Romeos and Lancias. And he just absolutely loved them. And I wish that I could evoke some stories from him. Maybe I can for us, but he ended up having a Lancia Aurelia B20 Coupe, Ferrari 250 Lusso, several old vintage, Zagato Alphas, and just really cool stuff. And of course, he sold the Lusso and brought the Lancia back to the United States instead of the Lusso, which Dad, I'll never forgive you for doing that, but anyway, so he had those, and he did some genuine racing in Italy, racing up and down the streets in front of hospitals, and at the army base he would race Ferraris, and his buddy had a Lancia, and he would race them and just raise all kinds of cane with them. And then he came back, he brought that Lancia back and got married. When my parents were pregnant with me, Dad bought a 1930 Model A Ford. As soon as I was born, he had that car ready. He basically restored it for he and I to take a little trips and, really just enjoy the car and kind of have some fun with Mom and stuff. But so he had a Triumph TR6, and he had this Model A, and he had a police car and stuff because he was, he was a prison warden in Georgia. We lived on the prison mansion and for the Georgia Diagnostic Department and the prison. So he had police cars, and he had all these cool cars, and I got to see the ins and outs of prison. And I got my hair cut there, and we would go and eat food there, and we lived on the property. And so he left his cars out front and just left me alone sometimes, and I would just go out and play and get myself into trouble and try to move cars and steer. You would jump in the cars, and I love them. I mean, they were so cool because he paid so much attention to the cars. I knew it was something special. So his Triumph, it was red, it was gorgeous. My gosh, to this day I don't understand why, but I got a big can of white latex house paint and just started lathering up the whole side. I mean, and I got to the middle of the passenger door painting that car white, and my mom came out and screamed, "Mitchell, what are you doing?" It's like, "I'm painting Dad's car. I think it would look better in white." So we had to get rid of the car. He was so upset that we got rid of the car. That was a big problem. There was a trust issue there, and I don't know if we're still over that right now, but I really liked it. It was such a cool car. It sounded cool, and it just looked cool. Dad had his own fuel pump. So for his police car and for his other cars, he would be able to use the state fuel pump. Well, it was off-site, so I guess one day he parked his old, it was a Plymouth Fury police interceptor is what it was, with a bubblegum machine blue police light on the top, right? That's what the warden drove. Well, he parked it right out front, and back then you had to drop the license plate and then unscrew the thing and just, I did that, except I used a garden hose, and I displaced about 20 gallons of fuel into the front yard. And again, Mom, smelled some gas, and, shows that raised an alert, especially because she didn't know where I was. God only knows. But so she comes out, and there I am, holding the garden hose, displacing all this fuel. And she goes, "What are you doing?" I was like, "I'm just putting gas in Dad's car." Why? Why are you using the hose? I mean, you can't I didn't get it. I'm trying to help. So he had to go have that thing. They had to drop the entire motor, all the carburation and the fuel lines and all that we had to take off and flush out. And oh my gosh, he was really upset. And but there I was. "I'm just trying to help, Dad. Love you." "Love you, Dad." And you could just see him just turn around and walk off. And then I got older, and my friend Philip and I, my best friend Phil Thomas, we did some fun things together, up to and including borrowing his stepdad's RX-7 several times, so much to the extent that he started lining flour up, like baking flour, like on the wheel. So he would put a line on the edge of the wheel and then into the garage to make sure, because obviously there was no way we'd be able to replicate that, right? Well, we knew where the flour was, and we just we would borrow it. We were 12 years old, out cruising around in this RX-7. Gosh, it was so cool. I love that car. And so Philip was at my house one day, and sure as heck, Mom and Dad went to the farmer's market or shopping and stuff, and I saw the keys in the Model A, and that was his prized possession at the time. Well, he had long since sold his Lancia, and he had this, I guess, olive drab green Model A. So I hooked up the battery and cranked it up. Philip and I backed it out, and we're driving around the neighborhood until my neighbor saw it. And then my neighbor waited until Dad got home and said, "I just want to let you know that I think your son was out driving your Model A." I was like, "Huh? When was this?" "Oh, right after school, right after about school time." And oh my gosh. The problem was, again, is that I tried to do it a few times prior, and I hooked up the battery cables to the wrong side, almost burnt the thing to the ground. That was a big problem. My mother ended up with a blue Ford LTD Country Squire wagon with the fake wood. And my sister and I would go to the movie stop to go rent VHS tapes, and there was always a time that I would jump the thing over the railroad tracks. One time we were going a little bit too fast, and it's like a 6,000-pound car, and once it goes up, it kind of goes like that, and it doesn't just, it doesn't look like Dukes of Hazzard all the time, but I think it was pretty front heavy, and bam, and I just cracked up the whole front bumper, and oh my gosh, what do I do? Okay, let's just take it back. Don't say a word. Well, the radiator was busted. It had, leaked all the coolant out. I was unaware of that. I didn't even notice anything smell like that. But you're the first person I've ever told that to. So, sorry, Dad, it was me. And thanks to my sister for not burying me in the sand on that one. Man, that thing was cool. Had a 302 carburetor, and it sounded cool when you floored it, and whoa, dunk. I couldn't keep myself out of trouble with these things. At one point, Dad had a 86 Chrysler New Yorker turbo. Oh man, that thing was fast for its time. And just doing burnouts, and you hold the brake down, you spool the turbo up and let it go, and it would just smoke tires. And Dad saw me doing that a few times in the cul-de-sac, and that was not a good thing. And so finally I got my own car. It was an MGB GT. Slow, couldn't do any damage. You can't kill yourself in it. And then I got a Ford Galaxy 390 XL convertible. We called it the Red October. It was red on red with a white top. Oh my gosh, it was so cool. So I guess, one of the best stories out of me growing up around cars was my parents had a 1980, it was a 280 SE Mercedes, silver on blue, beautiful car. We drove it to New York a lot. We have a house in the Hamptons. We would drive it about every summer and drive it up there. I just fell in love with that car. He had Series 3 Maserati Quattroports that I loved. And this was in the late 80s, early 90s, when they were really cool and very, very rare. And he had one that just had straight pipes, and man, that thing sounded good. And the leather interior was it was otherworldly, really. That car was amazing. And I loved it. I really, really got interested in high-performance sedans. My uncle had a 450 SEL 6.9 up in Westchester, New York, and I remember doing 130 up and down the highway all the time in that thing. No seatbelt, no car seat, nothing. Just I was sitting in from the back seat watching the gauge go up, and I was like, oh my gosh, Dad, look how fast he's going. And so I just love high-performance sedans, and I love the sleepers, love them. I got rid of several of my favorite cars in the whole world because I drove fast, and my wife was like, hey, we're having kids, so, what are you going to do? I was like, honey, I've got an E39 M5. I can get him in the back seat, no problem. And she was like, yeah, that thing's really fast. I was like, yeah, it's all right. I'm a good driver, honey, don't sweat it. So we ended up selling that, which I hate myself for. And I went through a whole bunch of 944 turbos. I couldn't get the boys in my turbo, so that's how I ended up with an E55 right now. I kick myself for getting rid of that E39 M5, but I love the E55. The boys absolutely love it, but they are very jaded. They have been exposed to cars since they were 5 days old. When all of my kids were 5 days old, I took them for a ride around the neighborhood in my Ferrari. Even before they were in a stroller, anything, they went in my Ferrari, and so that's why they like cars so much. I have a feeling one of them's going to sneak one of the cars out at some point and, geez, Dad, I kind of did something bad. It's kind of like when my 3-year-old, you catch her drawing on the wall with a permanent marker. Thanks, just appreciate that, I'm expecting it. I kind of hope maybe it happens because that's just another life, click in my life belt. Is it my kid, wipes out one of my collectible cars stuff.
If you love VINwiki, you'll have heard us talk about minimizing ownership cost on exotic cars. But the guys at Exotic Car Hacks have developed a system, an educational resource that you can access now using exoticcarhacks.com/VINwiki and get the best membership rates that they've offered since Black Friday. It shows you how to leverage financing, minimize what you pay, maximize how you sell it, and minimize the cost while you've got it. So be sure to join their community of owners and enthusiasts today at exoticcarhacks.com/VINwiki, and it'll be easier than ever to buy, own, and sell and love the car of your dreams.